But let me play the one part last night that Steve Kerr talked about, and it's not political. So
I thought it was pretty funny.
I thought it was great. It also it lets us in on something, because I think this is going to be something that I want to jump on after you hear this. He's talking about Tim Walz, who's the vice presidential candidate, and he was a high school coach back in the day. And here's what Steve Kerr had to say. Pretty funny.
I have to say, Coach Walz, way too much reliance on the blitz in '99 against Mankato East. You had a strong defensive line. I would have played more press coverage with your corners and then dropped the safeties into a Tampa 2. That's just me. Sorry. I wanted you to know how I feel every day of the NBA season. All right. So to me, that's a great line, because one, it tells you Steve Kerr, like Steph Curry, hears everything. He hears everything. And I was just thinking about this. I'll just throw this one out there.
Also, don't forget, every single time he coaches the Olympics.
Exactly.
His summer was full of that also.
Exactly.
I know everything.
Exactly. So I think that's another huge part, for me anyway, of what I'll like in a certain coach and what I won't like. You know, we always talk about how players handle criticism. It might be just as important how coaches handle criticism. And I think Steve Kerr is one of the few coaches out there that handles criticism every once in a while by saying, no, I have every right to be criticized. I might not have made the right answer. And I think that's admirable.
Yeah, he took a shot at Warriors fans, what he did.
What do you mean?
It means he's been listening to you guys the last 2 years talk about how he doesn't know what he's doing. And every single time Mankato East lined up against their opponent and they were in a 3-4 instead of a 4-3, and you know the corners were back a little bit too long, and that curl route was open 8 yards, and it just allowed Mankato East to continuously move the chains. There were fans and parents up in the stands saying, Tim Walz, what the hell are you doing? Can we please put somebody on number 8? Johnny's got to get his hand in the dirt. Like, no, but seriously, that is what coaches have to deal with at every single level at all times. Because it's during the first segment we were talking about, okay, what makes a great leader? Well, to be honest, what makes a great coach is winning. Like,
no doubt.
There has never been a great coach at a professional level that did not win. All time. Nobody comes to mind with a sub 500 record and you say, you know what? That's the guy. You know what? Jeff Fisher, he was a great NFL head coach whose record was 7-9 or 8-8, 15 of 20 years in the NFL. No one has ever thought that. And so winning does play a part of it. And when you don't win, you have to be able to be open to criticism, right? Because clearly your way is not working consistently enough to do what you're hired to do. And I think Kerr is just admitting that I was being facetious. He wasn't taking a shot at Warriors fans, I think. But I also think he was basically saying, like, yeah, I get it, you know?
My question to Bay Area fans is, like, who's your favorite all-time coach or manager in the Bay Area? Maybe even Bay Area history if you want to go back that far. I'll tell you the guy that I loved as a head coach.
Right.
You were all right, Boach. I love George Seifert. I love George Seifert as a coach.
How come?
Because he was ridiculously humble. He was never the center of attention. He obviously had a great football mind. I love coaches who don't feel the need to take credit. I never felt like he took credit, and he could have. And I just love the way that there's certain guys I love to hear talk, coaches, managers, GMs, etc. And Seifert, to me, was one because he was just so understated, but he was matter of fact, and he was a coach to me who clearly had the respect of the players without having to be a football rah-rah guy. I thought he was the typical head coach who was more of a teacher than a coach. I just liked his style. I love George Seifert's style, which was to stay in the background, even though he was coaching the best team in football at the time?
I think for me, Steve Kerr is probably number one on my list of pro coaches. But the coach in the Bay Area who I actually enjoy the most is Randy Bennett. St. Mary's men's basketball.
Okay, why?
Because he has enough. Well, first of all, he's never won an NCAA championship. And he's still been around for such a long period of time that his programs have had to change. He's had to evolve based on the way that the game is played in college. He always finds players that are never 5 stars, that aren't the most talented, and continues to win. But he doesn't do it in a way that is arrogant. He doesn't do it in a way that is, that makes him out to be an a-hole. I've watched that program over the course of my life, and he's been the same guy the entire time. And that is the thing that I respect the most about
consistency.
Consistency is what I believe that a great leader is.
Okay.
Consistent about being critical, consistent about telling you what their expectations are, and consistent about having a little bit of wiggle room. Because I think you need that to be a great coach and a great leader.
Let's go out to Sam. Sam's in Sunnyvale. Wants to talk about Steve Kerr and the kind of leader he is. What's going on, Sam? How you doing, man?
I'm doing okay, thanks. First of all, I love the show. The discussion is at really high intellectual level, and it makes it a pleasure.
Oh, thanks.
So about Steve Kerr, at least on one position, I think he's an incredible hypocrite. He is constantly speaking out about violence. Yet Steve Kerr was maybe the biggest violence enabler in basketball. Yeah. Draymond went ahead and tried to seriously harm Jordan Poole. And what is Steve Kerr mad about? That the news leaked out. Okay, so that's just plain hypocritical.
All
when
right.
he stands to benefit from being quiet about violence or coddling violence, then that's what he does. And I have very little respect for that. The second thing, and it's more general, is sports should be unifying. It's one of the great things about sports. Everyone can go ahead and enjoy it. Someone who's left wing, someone who's right wing, someone who's gay, someone who's straight. It's a unifying, wonderful unifying thing. And when coaches and other professional athletes get involved in politics, it's not unifying. It alienates people. If you want to go ahead and talk about politics after you're retired, great, go ahead. But while you're professionally involved, it's a turnoff. You're just exploiting your position, your opportunity to go ahead and make a point, but it turns off fans, and it takes away that wonderful experience of all being united behind something.
Sam, who's your favorite coach in Bay Area history? Coach, GM, manager? What's your style?
Yeah, Bo Mel.
How come?
Because I think Bo Mel, first of all, it's clear that he's a great guy, just as a person, right? I think that he has a really good relationship with the players, and that's very important. He knows when to be tough, but that's not his going-in position. And if you listen to what players say about him, they loved playing with him. Now, you can argue about how he's doing this year, and that's legitimate. But I don't know. I mean, you can't be a coach who performs terribly and be my favorite.
Sure.
But to my mind, sort of character is a really big deal, and how players feel about the coach. And, if players feel that the coach is a great guy and is doing the right thing, they're gonna try to play hard. They're gonna try and perform for that guy.
Appreciate the call, Sam. Character's something that Sam's talking about here. This is 707 on the Xfinity Mobile text line. Kerr's going to lose some fans after last night, that's for sure. What does that matter?
I don't think he cares. Important? I don't think he really cares. That's probably why he did it.
And Sam was probably saying he did something last night that he doesn't even realize that turns off a lot of players.
Well, I think
turns off a lot of fans.
The violence comparison to me is a step too far. But I do think it's fair to ask the question of, like why does he get to do that? I mean, other players or coaches that speak up that are asked to typically would not. That isn't what Kerr did last night is not very Belichickian of him. Bill Belichick is very open now and he's honest, and I think a lot of people love hearing from him. Anytime he's not wearing the hoodie, Bill Belichick is an open book. But when he's on the headset and when it's game time for the Patriots, you're not getting anything from him that he doesn't want to get out there.
Right.
And so that's what we're talking about, the difference in styles, because I think that Kerr is a good leader. I think he is a good head coach, but he's very different from a Bill Belichick or from a Bruce Bochy or from even perhaps a Bob Melvin. I really like Bob Melvin. I think Bob Melvin has gotten a bit of a bad rap over the course of his career because he hasn't ever been to a World Series and he hasn't achieved the heights that someone like Bruce Bochy has. But when I tell you that Bob Manager has been named the best manager in baseball 3 different times for 3 separate franchises, when I tell you he's got 1,500 wins, which is a better mark and a better winning percentage than the greats of Felipe Alou or Dusty Baker or other great managers that have managed here in the Bay Area, then you start to look at him a little bit differently. He's won more games in Oakland than Tony La Russa had, who coached and managed some of the greatest teams in Oakland A's history. So, it's not necessarily to me about stacking up the W's and the L's. It really is about what you identify with and what you believe makes a great leader. And sure, Steve Kerr and I think he'd even say it, like in regards to Draymond Green, he has been a bit inconsistent.
Yeah.
Compared to, I think, what he believes. But he also is very open about how he's not perfect.
Right.
And he's not ashamed to admit, and he doesn't believe that great leaders should be afraid to admit that they don't have all the answers. And that's something that I respect about him.
About Jim Harbaugh. Where does Jim Harbaugh fit on your ledger in terms of his leadership style? Like, I'll be honest with you. There's Harbaugh's the kind of guy that there's a lot I like about him, and then there's some stuff I don't like about him. But the one thing that I find with Harbaugh is he's fascinating for me to listen to. Like, I believe Jim Harbaugh is exactly who he is when he's at the podium and when he's coaching his teams. Like, he's weird. Like, he's a weird dude.
For me, it's back to work.
Cue it up.
And attacking with an enthusiasm unknown to mankind.
Now, what is that?
Make you run through a freaking wall?
You think that's sincere?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You can sit here and do a sugarcoat job.
That is who Jim Harbaugh is.
Give me one more, Harbaugh.
Come on.
Give me Harbaugh.
For me, it's back to work and attacking with an enthusiasm unknown to mankind.
He's been saying that since he was at Stanford, probably since he was at San Diego.
That's my point.
That's who he is.
Does it work for you?
So, and this is where I'm not going to lie. I'm a little hypocritical, Steiny. And you do know this about me. When he was the head coach of the 49ers.
Sure.
I had some issues with him.
Oh, like what?
He was an a-hole. I mean, the way that he talked to people is just disrespectful, to be honest. But now he's the head coach of a team that I hold dear to my heart.
Yeah, you love him, huh?
I can't get enough of him. I watched his hour-and-a-half opening press conference, and I was suckling at the teeth. Oh, my goodness. Jim Harbaugh is my coach. But that's the kind of emotion that he evokes. And that's something that I do respect, whether he's being rude to people or not, because his job is not to be your friend. His job is to win football games. And his methods are a little bit different than most. And he's not Steve Kerr. He's not even Kyle Shanahan. He's not even Bill Belichick. He's Jim Harbaugh. And that's something that I do respect about him, is that, again, he's consistent. I do think that Harbaugh is that.
Well, to me, the one thing where Harbaugh loses some stuff with me, big deal, right? He's Jim Harbaugh, Matt Steinmetz. What's it matter?
Well, you conquered 3 mediums.
4. But here's what what I didn't like about Harbaugh is kind of what he turned Colin Kaepernick into. And I realize that he gave Kaepernick his break, and then Kaepernick thrived. But the one thing I think people forget, remember the period of time when Colin Kaepernick, it was before the kneeling, when he was just the rudest dude to deal with the media. And I think that came right from Jim Harbaugh. And I don't think Colin Kaepernick did himself any favors when he talked to the media during that period of time. Again, this is before he knelt or anything like that happened. He was just abrasive. And it felt like Kaepernick changed under Jim Harbaugh and became more like Jim Harbaugh, and that meant he became a little less likable. Like I don't like the way he influenced Kaepernick as a person.
So you can say that, but I'll throw this at you.
Mm-hmm.
What if he also empowered Colin Kaepernick to the point that allowed him to do what he did and stand on what he believed in? I don't know if he would have been able to do that without Jim Harbaugh, without someone telling you that you are right and that the way that you go about your life and your business and your work should be who you are. And Colin Kaepernick took that the next step. He took it to a completely different realm. And I think he, in doing so, allowed us to have a very important conversation. I'm not giving Harbaugh credit for that. That is all Colin Kaepernick, because Harbaugh had nothing to lose in that situation. But my point is that kind of influence that you can always take something from people. You can take something from great coaches, from bad coaches. And my point is simply that if Colin Kaepernick took that from Jim Harbaugh, then him being an a-hole was worth it.
Yeah, I just, like, I never paint anybody with a what's the word? A brush of extremes. Like, Jim Harbaugh's a great coach. There's no doubt about it. Doesn't mean I love his style. I mean, Bobby Knight was a great coach. I didn't like his style. John Wooden was a great coach. I liked his style. And that's kind of what we're getting into today. Let's go to...
Well, he stole Norm's line.
He didn't.
Yes, he did.
Pete in San Ramon. What's up, Pete? How you doing, buddy?
Hey, good morning, guys. Love your show today.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
I want to go back just a little bit to shut up and dribble, if I may.
All right.
Okay, so all day long on all kind of news and media outlets, we're bombarded with Joe the plumber saying who he does or doesn't like in politics, or Nancy that runs a daycare center, or some fireman out of a tiny little town. And to say shut up and dribble, that's like telling Beyonce shut up and sing. It's just stupid to think that somebody should lose or win over fans because of their political opinions. It's just nonsense.
Thanks, Pete.
Appreciate it, Pete.
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
Well, I think it's because Kerr brought that up. He sort of invoked that a bit last night. But
well, the other thing, too,
I didn't think about it much, to be honest.
I mean, to me, can't we be honest and say, Steve Kerr happens to be the head coach of the Warriors, which is in the San Francisco Bay Area, which is probably the most liberal city in the country. And I don't know, would he do this in Memphis?
Well, I also don't know if...
Houston?
Well... This isn't the first time that Kerr has done something like this, by the way. I mean, it's not as if he hasn't been outspoken about his beliefs in the past. He's been obviously incredibly vocal on gun violence and other political areas that he used to tweet about, and he doesn't really do that much anymore. Not sure why. Maybe he just didn't like the backlash. Maybe he felt like he wasn't getting his message across. It's not for me to guess. But that's who he is. Whether he's been in Golden State, whether he's been the general manager of the Phoenix Suns, whether he's been a broadcaster, this is who he is. I mean, and he's sharing that with us. And whether I agree with what he said last night or not does not change the fact that I respect people that are unabashedly themselves. It's one of the reasons why I think people like this show, because they feel like every time they listen to Steiny and Guru, they're hearing who you guys are.